It was a chilly autumn evening in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The Smith family had just returned home after a long day. Everyone was tired, especially John, the father, who parked the car in the driveway and unloaded the groceries. In his hurry to get the kids inside and escape the cold breeze, he left the garage door half open. He didn't even notice. It was just one of those small mistakes that didn't feel important at the time. The night seemed peaceful. The children went upstairs. The mother began preparing for bed, and John relaxed in the living room with the TV on. Outside, the streets were empty, the streetlights casting pale, yellow glows. The garage door, however, stood slightly ajar, like an invitation. Hours passed. Midnight approached. A gentle creaking sound echoed through the house, too faint for anyone to notice. The wind whistled, leaves rustled, but the garage door still hung open. Unknown to the family, something or someone had already noticed. A pair of eyes glimmered in the shadows, watching silently from the dark edge of the driveway. Inside, John dozed off in his chair, unaware that danger had already slipped inside his home. The faint draft from the garage carried with it an unsettling chill. The security camera blinked red, recording everything, but no one thought to check it. By the time the family realized something was wrong, it was already too late. That forgotten door was no longer just a door. It had become the gateway for something terrifying to enter their lives. Sometimes it's not the big decisions that change everything. It's the little things we forget. And on this night, John's small mistake of leaving the garage door open would become the start of a nightmare his family would never forget. The house was silent, wrapped in the calm of midnight. Everyone had gone to sleep, the children tucked in their beds, and John and his wife resting upstairs. But the silence didn't last long. From the direction of the garage came a faint metallic clang, like something brushing against tools or an old bicycle. At first, the sound was so soft that no one paid attention. The wind, they thought. Maybe the house settling. But minutes later, another noise followed, this time sharper, like the creak of a footstep on concrete. John stirred in bed, half awake. He listened carefully. His wife whispered nervously, "Did you hear that?" They both sat up, the unease creeping in. The garage door, had he closed it? Doubt crawled into John's mind as he remembered parking earlier. Another thud echoed, this time louder. The children, still upstairs, began to stir. The family's dog growled low, staring at the stairway that led down to the garage. Its ears were pinned back, body stiff. John grabbed a flashlight, his hands trembling slightly. Each step down the creaking stairs felt heavier than the last. The noises grew stranger, scraping, shuffling, almost as if someone was moving objects inside the garage. The air felt colder near the door. A faint draft seeped through the crack beneath it. The family stood behind John, whispering nervously, the tension wrapping around them like chains. "It's probably nothing," John said, though his voice betrayed his fear. But deep inside, he already knew garages don't make noises on their own. Someone or something was inside. The realization chilled him to the bone. That forgotten door, left open just hours ago, had invited in the unknown. And now, those strange noises were the first sign that their nightmare was only beginning. The noises from the garage were no longer faint. They were undeniable. Something or someone had made its way inside. John's heart raced as he pressed his ear against the thin wooden door that separated the hallway from the garage. On the other side, a slow dragging sound moved across the concrete floor. He tightened his grip on the flashlight. His wife whispered, "Don't open it. Call the police." But John shook his head, thinking maybe it was just an animal. Raccoons, maybe. Yet, deep down, he knew this wasn't the sound of an animal. The family's dog growled louder now, its eyes fixed on the door, tail stiff. Then, without warning, a loud crash erupted inside, the sound of boxes tumbling down. The children upstairs screamed in fright. John's hands shook as he turned the doorknob slowly, pushing the door open just enough to shine the flashlight inside. The beam cut through the darkness, landing on a shadow moving quickly out of sight. John's breath caught in his throat. Someone was in the garage. The smell of damp clothes and sweat hung in the air. The corner of the garage revealed a figure crouching behind stacked boxes, motionless but very much alive. The flashlight caught a glimpse of pale skin and wide, unblinking eyes staring back at him. John froze. His wife pulled at his arm, whispering frantically, "Close the door. Close it." But before he could move, the figure slowly stood up, taller than John expected, its face partly hidden in shadow. This wasn't a lost animal, nor a neighbor wandering in by mistake. This was an intruder, silent, patient, and already inside their home. The forgotten garage door had done more than invite a presence. It had brought an unwanted guest who would change everything. John slammed the door shut with trembling hands, locking it quickly as his wife held the children close. His chest heaved with panic. They all stood in silence, listening. For a moment, the house seemed quiet again, too quiet. But they knew it wasn't over. The garage had gone dark, but something inside was still moving. The security camera's tiny red light blinked steadily, recording every second. John pulled out his phone, opening the live feed from the camera. His wife leaned over his shoulder. The children huddled behind them. The screen flickered, then cleared. What they saw made their blood run cold. A tall, thin figure stood in the far corner of the garage, perfectly still, facing the camera directly. Its eyes reflected the dim light, giving them a ghostly glow. It wasn't hiding anymore. It wanted to be seen. John's wife covered her mouth to keep from screaming. The children whimpered softly. John's hand shook so badly he nearly dropped the phone. He whispered, "It knows we're watching." Then, as if on cue, the figure tilted its head unnaturally, like a predator studying its prey. It took a slow step forward, dragging one foot across the concrete floor. The sound was faint, but clear enough to cut through the silence of the night. Suddenly, the camera glitched, static lines streaked across the screen, then cleared again. This time, the figure was closer, much closer, right beneath the hanging bicycles. Its eyes locked onto the lens, unblinking. John's wife cried out softly, "It's coming closer." And then the most terrifying moment, when the camera glitched again and the figure vanished from sight. The garage looked empty, too empty. But they all knew the truth. The danger hadn't disappeared. It had simply hidden itself, somewhere in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The forgotten garage door had opened a nightmare, and the worst was still to come. The family could no longer sit in silence. Fear had grown heavier with every passing second. John knew he couldn't just wait for the danger to come to them. Clutching a heavy wrench from the toolbox, he decided to face whatever was inside the garage. His wife begged him not to go, whispering through tears, "Please, don't open that door again." But John's jaw tightened. His children were trembling behind him, and he couldn't let the threat linger. He unlocked the door slowly, flashlight in one hand, wrench in the other. The cold draft from the garage rushed into the hallway, making the hair on his arms stand. The garage looked darker than before, as if the shadows had grown thicker. John stepped inside. His flashlight beam scanned across boxes, tools, and bicycles. Everything appeared normal, yet the air carried an unsettling heaviness, like he was being watched. He called out, voice shaking, "Who's there? Show yourself." No reply, only silence, until the sound of shuffling echoed from the far corner. John swung the flashlight toward it. The beam landed on the figure again, this time standing tall, its face still hidden, but its posture aggressive. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. John raised a wrench, his hands slick with sweat. His voice cracked. "This is my house. Get out." Suddenly, the figure lunged forward a step, fast and deliberate. John stumbled back, almost dropping the flashlight. His heart hammered his chest as the intruder stopped midway, frozen once again, as if taunting him. The confrontation had begun. This was no longer about a forgotten garage door. It was now a battle of survival between John and the shadow that had slipped inside his home. John's grip on the wrench tightened as his flashlight flickered across the garage. The figure had disappeared again, swallowed by the shadows. Every corner felt alive, every shadow ready to move. His wife whispered from the doorway, "John, please come back." But John forced himself to step deeper inside. He had to end this. The garage was deathly silent now, except for John's ragged breathing. His flashlight beam swept across the shelves, bicycles, and stacked boxes, then froze. Something glistened near the back wall. John moved closer, his heart pounding. The boxes had been disturbed, pulled aside, and behind them, in the darkness, lay something he never expected. A small blanket, old food wrappers, and a half-empty bottle of water. Someone had been living in his garage for days, maybe weeks. His stomach turned cold. The thought of his children sleeping upstairs while a stranger hid just beneath them made his knees weak. He whispered to himself, "Oh my God!" Then a sudden sound, a sharp breath. John whipped the flashlight around. The intruder was there, crouched low, staring at him with wide, hollow eyes. The man looked filthy, his clothes torn, his face pale. He wasn't a ghost. He was real. John stumbled back, his voice trembling. "Why are you here?" The stranger didn't answer. Instead, he stood slowly, his bones cracking, his gaze unblinking. His presence was more terrifying than anything John had imagined. This wasn't just a trespasser. It was someone who had been studying them, living among their things, watching every move. The realization hit like a knife. Their home had been invaded long before tonight. The forgotten garage door wasn't the beginning of danger. It was simply the night the family finally discovered the horror hiding inside. The intruder's hollow stare haunted John as he stood frozen, wrench in hand. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. His wife screamed from the doorway, and the children cried upstairs. Adrenaline surged through John's veins. He shouted, his voice trembling but firm, "Get out! Leave now!" The stranger didn't move. His pale face remained blank, unreadable, until finally, with a slow step backward, he melted into the shadows. The sound of footsteps echoed across the garage floor, then faded into silence. John rushed forward, swinging the flashlight beam in every direction, but the man was gone. The side door leading out to the yard stood ajar, swaying gently in the night breeze. The danger had slipped away, leaving only the chilling evidence of his presence. The family huddled together in the living room, their faces pale with fear. John checked the garage one last time, locking every door and window tightly, then returned to hold his wife and children. For the rest of the night, none of them slept. Every creak, every gust of wind felt like a warning. By morning, exhaustion and terror had left them shaken. Police arrived, combing through the garage and finding the evidence of someone's hidden life there, blankets, wrappers, and small belongings. The officer shook his head grimly and said, "You're lucky. This could have ended much worse." John realized the truth then. One small mistake had nearly cost his family everything. A simple forgotten garage door had turned their home into a hunting ground for someone desperate, dangerous, and unpredictable. From that day forward, John never forgot again. Every lock, every door, every window was checked twice. The family learned the hard way that sometimes it's not the monsters in our imagination we should fear, but the ones already hiding in the shadows, waiting for the smallest opportunity to step inside.